be yourself, but think about what that actually means, because most of us have either a very small idea of who we are or a very limited idea of who that is. And being yourself is a lot bigger and broader than most people ever think about. So be yourself, but be the best version of you.
Welcome to yourbrilliance.com. I'm your host, Amy Waterman. Whether you are a coach or a consultant or a content creator, you need a personal brand. Potential clients are going to be looking at your social media and your website to see if you are the right fit for the job. They're not just going to be looking at your work, though. They're going to be looking at you. Do you seem likable? Do you seem genuine? Do you seem like the sort of person they want to work with? Selling yourself as a person is not as easy as selling your services. You've got to balance personality with professionalism. You've got to share something of yourself, but not too much. That's a balancing act that our guest for today, Rachel Beohm, knows very well. Rachel trains executives, HR professionals, speakers, and job seekers in the art of nonverbal communication. With a few simple adjustments, her clients go on to nail their pitches, presentations, and personal branding. Welcome, Rachel.
Hi, Amy. Thank you so much for having me on your show.
So I want to start out with a personal question.
Yeah.
You are a communication coach, and I am sure that your communication gets put under the spotlight all the time. So was this something that you were just always a natural at?
Absolutely not. Not at all. I was pretty friendly and outgoing as a child, but then in middle school and high school, as so often happens with women in particular, in girls, they have a tendency to collapse at that age. And I developed social anxiety so that I didn't have a lot of friends. I remember, riding on the bus and just staring out the window all by myself. And it got worse and worse as time went on until I was in college, and I just happened to be present one day when my mentor was coaching a student teacher on presentation skills. And I just watched her right before my very eyes. She transformed from this sort of young and experienced, kind of nervous young lady into a college educator. And I was blown away. I thought that's amazing and could immediately see how I could use that in my own life. And so I started practicing the things that I'd seen that day and learning a lot about it. And then from there, I just started sharing it. And it obviously has completely changed my life.
Oh, see, now what I love about this is it perfectly illustrates the question I wanted to ask you. So we all know that those personal stories, like that journey of becoming where we discovered our mission and we transformed, and now we get to teach others, that is really one of those powerful ways to sell ourselves in the work we do.
Mm-hmm.
But not everybody has an awesome personal story. Not everybody actually wants to share what they've been through. So how can we sell ourselves effectively and get that perfect balance between the personal side and the professional side?
It is a balancing act, isn't it? Because there are a lot of people out there who overshare, share too much or share inappropriately. And then there's other people on the completely opposite side of the spectrum that are personality less, like they're just two-dimensional. And we don't trust people like that because we know there has to be more to the story. And yet at the same time, when people are just sort of sharing it all like you're drinking from a fire hose, then that makes us uncomfortable too, because that's a boundary violation. So finding that balance between being real and honest and being yourself while also being appropriate to what other people need and the boundaries, that is a big part of it. And I think a lot of it has to do with how you present yourself more than what you share. So for example, even though you might not have a specific story, if you're just being present as your own real self and fully showing up, that's a huge way that you can be real without necessarily having to bear all so that people can see, because we all have things we want to keep private. That's normal and good.
Yes. So I love that. And I love that you brought up the oversharing thing, because I think right now, when we know, okay, right, we've got to share some personal stuff about ourselves, sometimes it's hard to know where that boundary is and what that
Sure.
limit is. And some people do overshare. And I want to know, is there some sort of test we could apply, like to a tweet or a post or a blog post,
Mm.
that would tell us, is this appropriate to share, or is this too much information?
I think it comes down to who your audience is. So we're talking here in terms of career. If you are, for example, you're sharing on LinkedIn or Twitter, like you said, Twitter is wide open. Some other things, like say Facebook, you can keep that more private. But if you're sharing something with the great wide world, and it's going to be out there forever for anyone to ever see, you do have to keep in mind the audience that you're presenting to. And it's not just the audience that you intend, it's the audience, the unintentional audience. Anyone can see that. And so being real and being honest and being yourself and letting your personality shine through, absolutely do that. And yet keep in mind that how that is received by the people that are then stalking you when you're out there looking for a job. Um, that sends them a message about who you are and how you behave. Now, perhaps you don't want to work at a place where you can't swear all the time, or where it's not appropriate for you to dress in a certain way, or whatever the case may be, in which case, fine. But if you want a job that has a certain level of professionality in it, then you need to demonstrate that you can and do meet that standard in your normal life, because they know, the people who are looking know that that's how you're going to be, and that what they see is what they're going to get.
So what I really like about it, I'm kind of thinking of two different areas here. I'm thinking of the first one is even sharing some of your personal preferences. Like, as we all know, political stuff sharing right now is so difficult. But I'm even thinking about sports teams, right? Like, if you
Sure.
are a certain fan of a sports team and
Yeah.
maybe your boss hates that sports team, what's that going to do? And then there's that.
Die hard fan.
Oh, I know. You don't want to get fired just because you supported the wrong team. But there's that, and there's the other aspect of it, which I think is really important to bring up, which is when we share our stories, sometimes we share stories about the other people in our lives. I'm
Mm.
thinking of people like in my world, like the dating advice industry, who will talk about exes or previous partners.
Yeah,
And sometimes that can be difficult too, because our stories are not just our stories. Our stories
absolutely.
are, yeah, involve other people.
That's absolutely true. So it's not just your own privacy that you're taking into account then, but other people's. And again, it's not just the fact that you might share something that makes that person uncomfortable because maybe you don't care, but it's what it says about you when you do that. What your audience then is learning about your character and about your boundaries and about what's important to you, and how respectful you are of other people, by how you treat others. So whether or not you care if the story is out there for that person's sake, you need to think about what it says about you when you are sharing details about other people's lives.
It is all so difficult to get right. And I'm going to throw another popular word in there right now that is very difficult to get right, and that is vulnerability.
Mm,
We know that our leaders are supposed to be vulnerable. We know that it's okay to not have all the answers. It's okay
mm.
to share your mistakes. But then again, there's too much information, and losing confidence from your team. So could you help us really hone in on what vulnerability is in terms of leadership, and also how much is the right amount?
Yes, absolutely. I think it is again one of those tricky things, and yet really what it comes down to is we want to know we can trust our leaders, but we also want to know that they're real people. And knowing that they're real and that they're being honest with us does contribute to that trust. So long as there's something else that we can trust, right? If they're just like, I have no idea, I don't know anything, this is terrible, and they're freaking out, then we don't trust that they can get us through whatever the situation is. But if there is something that we can latch on to, if we know that if they say, I don't know what the answers are, but I know we can figure it out. Now that's a credible way of saying, I don't have it figured out. Or if they say, I'm dealing with a lot of emotions here right now too. I'm nervous and scared, but I know that all of us together, we can be here for each other and support each other, and we'll still make our goal, or whatever the case may be. Again, it comes back to what I said earlier. It's not necessarily what you're saying, but it's how you're saying it, how you're presenting it. Are you freaking out and worrying about everything that's going on, or are you honestly sharing where you are while also conveying the confidence that you have in your resourcefulness, in your creativity, in your work ethic, in your team, in your goal, in your vision, whatever it happens to be? So keeping that in mind, that frames how you present that vulnerability that is an important buzzword right now, and it's one that I've written on before. But if you can balance that with credibility, it helps people. It helps people to trust you more.
So what I really like about this is it's kind of shifting my perspective on that. Until now, I've really thought of vulnerability as a personal thing. When you are vulnerable as a leader, you're trying to tap into some of those personal emotions and the things you're going through and bring it into the workplace. But what I'm actually hearing is that we're really talking about strategic vulnerability. This is not so much about you digging deep and sharing your real self with the office. It's about showing up as a leader in a human way that's designed to help your team navigate whatever they're going through. So
Mm-hmm.
vulnerability is not selfish. It's not personal. It's not something you're doing for yourself. In this situation, this is something you're doing for your team to show them that
Yeah.
it's okay to be human.
Yeah. Leadership, one of the hardest things about leadership is that it's not ever about you. It's all your choices are about what's best for the people that I am trying to lead. And that's why sometimes it's better to just keep your mouth shut if you're feeling upset or unsure or uncertain. Sometimes they need to know that you have it figured out, even though you might not know the details, that you can deal. And then there are times when they need to know that we're in this together, and I'm feeling it too, and that sort of thing. As a leader, sometimes you need someone else that you can go share all those emotions and worries and concerns with, because it's not good for your team to hear all the processing, or what the case may be. So leadership is really about bringing other people along with you, and that requires some empathetic and thoughtful considerations.
So I want to bring up another buzzword around this topic, and that is so we're supposed to be vulnerable, but we're also supposed to be authentic. And
Mm-hmm.
oh, that's such a problematic word because like we were talking about earlier, does authentic mean I wear my sports team jersey to the office? Does authentic mean that I share my opinions about things that maybe might alienate some members of my team? Does, because the problem with authenticity is anytime we come out and we say, this is what I like, this is who I am as a person, there's going to be somebody on our team, maybe customers, maybe leadership, who says, I don't think the same way about you anymore.
Uh-huh.
So how do we balance that? Like, isn't the social mask safer for that reason?
Well, maybe. I think that is a fantasy, frankly, because no matter what unless you don't share anything at all, and you go back to the nameless, faceless mask person that has no personality, no matter what you say and what you do, someone's not going to like it. That there's what is the saying? You can please some of the people none of the time, or none of the people all the time, or I don't remember, but you can't you can't please everyone. No one is going to like everything. Um, so trying to be safe by only saying things that are considered safe is going to backfire. People are going to see through it, and it's not going to work anyway. You can't. There's no 100% safe thing. You know, I love vanilla, and there are a lot of people who think that's super boring. um, but on the flip side of the coin, you do definitely have to take your audience in mind when you are being authentic. There are a lot of people who use authenticity as an excuse to blast their opinions or to run roughshod over people. I remember, I don't remember who it was that said it, but a quote that really stuck with me is that honesty is never an excuse for cruelty. And yet there are people who do use it that way, that, well, I'm just being honest, I'm just being myself, this is just how I am. So again, we're coming back to that balance again between, on the one hand, being brave enough to be real, and yet at the other hand, being considerate enough to not hurt or unnecessarily provoke people, often to your own detriment, because you're blasting everyone with your opinions.
Yeah. So I want to talk to those members of the audience who really feel comfortable with that social mask and really feel comfortable being safe and really feel comfortable saying they like vanilla, but they don't want to push it any further. So when you are a perfectionist and you really want to be very careful and conscious about everything you say, and you are challenged now to show up and be more authentic, to show up and be more vulnerable, and to let go and not be so, careful and considerate about every single thing, how can you kind of let go a little bit? And I'll just tell you the framework I'm thinking about. I'm thinking about videos, and I'm thinking about how many of us, myself included, feel so much more comfortable if I know everything I'm going to say, because
Sure.
then I'm in control. And if
Mm-hmm.
I let go and I just speak from my heart to the camera,
Yeah.
I freeze. So
Yeah.
help someone like me. How do I let go and show up more?
Well, I would say the first thing is just practice. As terrible as it sounds, is just taking those baby steps and little by little expanding. So you're already doing it, obviously, because you're on camera. But for other members of the audience, just doing one little scary thing. And it's different for everybody because, like, for example, I love taking myself out to dinner. I love going to dinner by myself. Um, and I have friends who are like, how do you do that? I always feel so like sad and lonely and embarrassed if I have to go out by myself because I'm traveling, and it doesn't bother me at all. So that would not be a place for me to have to that's not somewhere where I could push myself because it's already comfortable. But I won't work out in front of anybody else. So that would be a place for me to expand my comfort zone a little bit and not worry about being as much of a perfectionist. I'm not going to do it right, or maybe I don't lift as much weight as someone else. And so finding that place where you can just take a step and feel safe enough to let yourself not be perfect is good. And then that it's like a muscle. You build a bravery or courage muscle, and you start to become more and more comfortable with your own self. And then the other thing I would say is that it's a mindset shift. Perfectionism, I don't know where it comes from exactly, but it is that mask. It is that protection. We think that if we're perfect, then people will like us and they'll admire us and we won't get chastised, or whatever the case is for each person. But it's a fallacy, and it's been very clearly linked with things like depression and addiction and all sorts of things, because it's an unachievable goal. So breaking down those mental barriers, and affirmations are great. I love that. Things like I am worthy. I'm worthy of love just by being. Or thinking of other people. I mean, how many people do you love or value or respect who are perfect? None, because no one is, right? I mean, like, you think of your family members, or just even a celebrity that you love. They're not perfect. No one's perfect. So just turning that around on yourself sometimes can really help break down those barriers too.
I love that. And I think this is really the key with the personal branding, because as we interject more of our personality and more of our authentic self, we aren't going to please everyone. And that's
Yeah.
actually exactly how it's supposed to be. So I love
Absolutely.
that.
Absolutely. And you find your people, right? You the more focused your brand is, the more accurate and value driven you are, and you show up, and your actions align with who you actually are, you will turn people off. There are people who are going to say that's not for me, but then there are other people who will latch on, who will resonate with what you're saying, and say, oh, I love this. This is perfect. This is exactly right. And you'll find your fit. I think the thing is, we worry that that won't happen. We think no one's going to like me. No, there is no one out there like me. And I guarantee you, in 7 billion people, there are some that are very much like you, who are a great fit. But you have to actually find each other. And the only way to do that is to be seen.
So this is wonderful. So this really is the end goal of it, is when you manage to cultivate that personal brand with the right balance, you find your tribe, and in the
Yeah.
end, you become successful that way. I love that. Now you offer so many resources. So we have talked a lot around this balance, but it is really, really hard to take it from, okay, right, I've got to do this
Yes.
balance, actually practicing it. And
Yeah.
you help people one-on-one, you do presentations and workshops. If somebody is saying, great, I love it, I want to do this balance, I'm not really sure how to, what would you recommend to them?
Well, I have a lot of free resources on my website, and probably the one that I've gotten the most positive feedback from is it's right on my homepage, and it's 21 days to build a better life. So it's an email coaching program. It's a couple paragraphs every day for 3 weeks. And there are literal, physical, concrete tips and skills that you could do to either, some of it's body language and nonverbal communication stuff, some of it's presence, some of it's mindset stuff, just little things every day. And I've gotten great feedback on that. The frequency of it, along with the tips themselves, people find very, very helpful. So that's probably where I'd start.
Fantastic. And for those of you watching, you want to go get this free guide, you want to nail your personal brand, you want to figure out how you can get that perfect balance of authenticity and vulnerability and professionalism, we have a link for you. Just go to yourbrilliance.org/Rachel. That's yourbrilliance.org/RACHEL. Rachel, thank you so much for your time and coming on. And I wondered if you had any last message you would like to leave our viewers with.
I would just say be yourself, but think about what that actually means, because most of us have either a very small idea of who we are or a very limited idea of who that is. And being yourself is a lot bigger and broader than most people ever think about. So be yourself, but be the best version of you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. And thank you out there for watching. Now, did you have any aha moments or insights while watching this interview? If so, let us know about it in the comments. For more interviews like these, make sure to subscribe to Your Brilliance TV here on YouTube, and then come on over to yourbrilliance.com for more tips and insights on how you can live your most brilliant life. See you next time.